Hi everyone and welcome back to another Mixed Media Tuesday. Today I'm planning to create a double page art journal and I get a lot of questions on how I get inspiration. So for today I'm going to show you the whole thought process and hopefully it is going to inspire you. So I do have these ephemera. These are cutouts that you can pop out, and I know that I'm going for a Christmas journal. So I'm just looking at them, trying to think how I can use them as my focal points. But to tell you the truth, starting from the focal point isn't always the way I go. So here I'm just looking at the images, and then at the end I'm just going to leave them aside and just work on an art journal background. So as you can see, I'm working today with a collection from Arden Creative Studios. This is the Season of Joy, which is created by the super talented Katie Pertreed. And for my background, I'm starting with a Decoupage paper. So you will find in this package 4 different designs and multiples of the same design. I believe there are 3 of each design. So I decided to go with a gorgeous green one. And I'm going to just tear off a couple of corners so that I can stick them on my background. Now use any matte glue that you have to stick it down. This is decoupage paper, which means that it is very thin and it kind of blends in with the page that you apply it on. Also, it is very durable, so don't worry if you don't apply it perfectly the first time. You can always peel it off and just reposition. However, if you end up with some wrinkles, even better. This is a mixed media project and wrinkles are always welcomed since they are going to give us some texture. Now I'm going to cover the top as well just to make sure that I have a nice bond, and then I'm going to stick the other corner. Of course, don't throw away any pieces that you haven't used from that decoupage paper. You can always use it for other types of decoration. And I am actually planning to share this year my wooden slice ornaments, and I think these are perfect for applying them on the wood to create the base. Anyway, I will be sharing that project in one of my future videos before Christmas. Now I am going to apply some acrylic paint and I went with Ivory because I want to keep the background kind of light. You can definitely go with green for this one since we do have the green on of the leaves on the decorative paper. And I am going for today to try and embrace the blank space. So I don't want to add ephemera and focal points all over the place. I want to keep it kind of simple, which is very difficult for me. You will tell me what you think when this page is done at the end in the comments. So now I am using my heat gun to make sure that this is completely dry before I move on to the next step. Now I am going to use a stamp from the same collection. It has lovely Christmas wording and images and everything, which is perfect for the background. However, here I am thinking maybe I want to keep that acetate on one side so it is sturdier. You know that I don't like to stamp with a stamping block on my backgrounds. This way I end up not getting the perfect impression, which is perfect for art journaling. I don't want to end up with rectangles and everything. All I want is to have some organic visual texture at the background. So here I'm just using the stamp as it is, and I'm working with a permanent ink, which is very important for this stage, and you will see in a bit why. But wait for it. Now I am going to randomly stamp different parts of the stamp set, and you can see it is quite a big one. But you know, with that acetate on one side, I wasn't able to have the flexibility that I wanted with the stamp, so I just removed that as well, and now I feel more free to stamp every part that I choose. So you see, I'm not thinking anything at this stage. I don't even know what my focal point is going to be. I'm just having fun with that layer and with that step. I'm enjoying at this stage just stamping here and there and adding the visual texture that I want. Now at this stage, if you want, you can definitely have the background more subtle by switching the color of the permanent ink. So here I went with black. You can definitely go with light green, for example, or with brown, something that is not as strong as black. And now I'm going to move on and do a little bit of inking on the edges. Now the fun part about this technique is that it kind of creates a border, it kind of creates a frame or a vignette look on your project, which is always going to make it look more finished. I'm using Vintage Photo. This is a distress ink, which means that it is easily removable if you make a mistake. So here I'm going to apply even more so that you can see that it's not the end of the world. You can use a baby wipe and just wipe it off. No issues at all. This is not a permanent thing and it always reacts with water. Plus we do have matte medium underneath as well as acrylic paint, and both these mediums are non-porous, which means that whatever you place on top you can easily wipe it off if it doesn't dry permanent. So now I'm going to move on to the next step, and I want to add some splatters, but I'm trying to find which color of green I want to use. I went with the one which is more dusty, more muted. So you can definitely use whichever you want. You can even use black for splattering. And you see you don't really need a lot of acrylic paint, just a dab will do. Dilute it with water, and with a very thin brush you can add your splatters. Here I'm not going for a very thin splattering, that's why I don't splatter the first one outside of the page. Usually that's what I do. I like the bigger blobs here and there on the background, so that without actually doing anything on that blank space, I still have that visual texture and interest that I want with the splattering and that little bit of stamping. Now that corner isn't stuck down well there, and it's driving me crazy for some reason, so I just have to make sure that it is nicely stuck down. So just a little bit of extra glue there will do the trick. And today I decided not to edit out any mistakes or try to make the video more compact. I'm just leaving the whole process there so you can see how I work. And you will see that I'm going to make a mistake because I'm very impatient here with my heat gun and I didn't make sure that all the splatters are completely dry. So here, before I move on to the next step, which I wanted to be stenciling, so I have my stencil ready, my ink pad and everything. I thought, let's see, are these dry? Which they aren't, and you can see the mess. Now, don't be afraid. Things like that happen all the time, they happen to me as well, but there is always a way to cover up a mistake. Just stick an ephemera on top, or just use your baby wipes. And you see here, that is the beauty of using the black permanent ink, because even though I'm wiping off with a baby wipe, that permanent ink is there and I'm not ending up with a smudge. Also, I was able to wipe off that acrylic paint just because I was working on top of another acrylic paint which was not porous. So everything is done. We will assume that nothing ever happened. You don't tell anyone about that. Usually I would just cut off things like that so that the video is shorter and you don't have to see the mistakes. But I know that sometimes it is important for everyone to see that everyone does mistakes. Just because I post videos on YouTube doesn't mean that I am perfect. I'm far from it and I make mistakes all the time. So I am using my Vintage Photo with this lovely stencil which adds a very subtle background. Hope you can see here. Absolutely love the stencil, so it does give some interest at the background without overwhelming it. And now I am going to clean up my stencil and I'm going to move on and do a little bit of actual texture with my paste. And again, here you can introduce any color of paste that you like. I would go with green or even copper, and gold would look just fine here. However, I decided to go with white just so that I can keep this page kind of lighter toned. And just because these are it's a very delicate design, it's not going to overwhelm the page as well. So I'm applying the same design on both pages. Always use the same design on both pages. It's going to kind of bring everything together and keep your project coherent. Now I am going to clean up the stencil and I'm going to put that journal aside. I always get the question of how long does it take for that paste to dry. So this is the last step that I do for my journal. I leave it aside to dry, and by the time I clean the stencil, I bring in the ephemera and try to decide and audition what I want to use as a focal point, that paste is going to be dry. So here I'm bringing in my ephemera packs, and I have 3 different ones from this collection. I can mix and match some of them. So here you see I'm going to take out what I have, and I decided just by browsing through those that the frames would look great. And I'm thinking maybe I want to use some of the bigger sentiments, which I end up not using at the end. Just look through what you have, cut out images, look at the pattern papers, look at some stamps that you might have. I'm sure you will be able to find some focal points. Now this part of the process where I try to decide which ephemera I'm going to use and how to create my clusters is very satisfying to me. It really makes me happy. I get some comments on, oh, this is cheating, you used to create your very own focal points with stamps or drawing, etc. Well, yes, I did, but it's not that simple to create a well-balanced composition even when you have ready-made ephemera. So it really depends on what makes you happy. Just do you. Do what makes you happy. You want to stamp your elements and color them and stick them down? Do that. I'm just sharing what makes me happy at the time. And I do switch styles and I do switch techniques depending on the inspiration that hits me on that day. Now, one thing I can tell you for sure, there is no art journal police out there. Just use whatever makes you happy. So in terms of composition in these 2 pages, I decided to have the heavy composition, the bigger one, on this side of the page, on this page. And then on the right page, I'm going to add mainly a small cluster with a sentiment. Now here I started working on the right page for the little cluster, but I found this quote that says, "Here comes Santa Claus," which I thought it would be perfect to stick on the other cluster. So I'm back to page 1. And you see that for all the ephemera, I'm using my blending tool and I make sure that I ink up the edges to get rid of any white edge. I think I've forgotten a few of them, but really, if you do it on all of them, it really makes a difference. Plus, it gives that same vibe as the edges of my pages. Now, I am just pulling out some extra ephemera to create the other cluster. And one more thing that I need to mention is that I'm using my Nuvo Deluxe glue to stick everything down. You can definitely go with your matte glue, the one that I used for the decoupage paper in the beginning. But for this project, I'm not planning to do anything crazy on top of the ephemera. Like I normally go and grab my big brush markers. I'm not going for that technique today. So all I do is just stick everything down without the need to seal it down and cover it on top. So here you see I'm adding some finishing touches with a fine liner. I'm adding some sketchy lines on some of the ephemera. I'm not doing it all over. I don't outline everything from those ephemera cutouts, and I definitely don't try to create the perfect line. Sketchy lines are best for me. That's what works for me and that's what I enjoy doing. And I will switch to a white gel pen now to add some highlights here and there. Again, I absolutely love this look. I feel like it gives more life to all the little cutout pieces that I have used. And again, for this look, I don't pay attention on where the light might come from. Just sketchy lines of white here and there just work for me. And if you follow my art journaling journey for quite some time, you know what comes next. This is the finishing touch. I'm going to add some white splatters and call it done. So here I'm working with white calligraphy ink. Again, I get a lot of questions about that. You can definitely dilute acrylic paint. You can use any other type of medium that you can think of. I find that calligraphy ink works great just because it is ready there in the jar for me to use whenever I want. Now I'm using a very thin brush again, and I feel like these white splatters are going to read in your mind as snow, since it is a winter Christmas holiday themed page. Now I am going to show you up close the finishing project, and you can see some close-up photos at the end as well. Check the description for coupon codes and the full supply list of everything I used. I hope that you had fun today, that you got inspired, and I'll see you all next time.